Hello YouTube, it's CM Maritime History, and tonight I'll be talking about the Queen Mary. Now, I've promised this video for a while, and I've just gotten around to doing it now, after that poll we had, what was that, 2 weeks ago, I believe? Also, something that wasn't in the poll, this submarine down here, the Scorpion, oh, never mind, sorry. Jumped ahead a little bit there. This submarine down here, the Scorpion, that will actually be the next video that comes out after this, or before this, whichever I post first. Not sure which I will yet. But let's just say this post first, so, yeah. So, like I said, tonight's video is about the Queen Mary. So, before we start with the actual info about the Queen Mary, I'd like to start with explaining the 1930s ocean liner mega project rigs. So, on this channel, we're currently discussing the Queen Mary, of course. Soon there'll be a video on the United States, which is kind of a continuation of this 1930s project, but it never came to be. And I remember a few months back, I started my ocean liner projects that never fulfilled to be channel, sort of, I don't remember the exact name, from my Great Passenger Ships That Never Were book that I have sitting on my bookshelf. That might pick up again after this. I'm not sure what I'm really doing at the moment, but we'll have to see. So anyway, the big countries in transatlantic travel. So we have Britain, Germany, France, definitely France, and America too. Now America was a late player in the game, but they still had some good hits, such as the United States, but that was not until 1959, and we'll get to that eventually. But at the moment, we're going to stick with the 1930s ones. So Germany launched Bremen. I hope I pronounced that right. I think I always get it wrong, but I believe it's Bremen. Bremen and Europa. France launched, well, they would launch Normandy, and for the SS France come a little bit after that, but I would consider that part of this as well. Great Britain launched two, the Queen Mary and the Oceanic. Oceanic 3, though, actually was not ever fully built. Her hull was melted, supposedly speaking, melted down into parts for the Georgic and Britannic. Now, if you guys would like a video on that, just let me know in the comment section. But, yeah, so without further ado, let's begin. This is a diagram of the Queen Mary from, I forget the book title, I really do, I'm very sorry. Cross-sections of Queen Mary or something, I believe was what it was called. I don't remember exactly, but this is what it was from. That was actually given to passengers on the Queen Mary on its maiden voyage, and considering the ship was pulled out of service in 1967, it's amazing some people still have copies of this. You cannot, I've tried, trust me, I really have, you cannot, to my knowledge, unless you buy it off eBay, find an actual copy of this online. So, with Weimar Germany launching the Bremen and the Europa into service, Britain did not want to be left behind. So the White Star Line, famous for building Titanic, of course, and Olympic and Britannic and the whole class of ships there, began construction on their 80,000-ton... Okay, so all these liners try to be around 1,000 feet long. That's what they were aiming for. So Queen Mary beat that by about, I think it was 1,020-some feet, I believe the Queen Mary is, so I'll have to check that for you guys then. But they began construction on their 80,000-ton Oceanic in 1928, while Cunard, who made the Lusitania and Mauretania, planned a 75,000-ton unnamed ship of their own. Eventually it would be the Queen Mary, but they didn't decide that yet. Also, for Cunard Line, we already have Cunard Line ships on this channel and videos. We have the Mauretania of 1938. That was actually my third video, way back, almost, no, over a year ago now. That takes you back. So let's continue. Construction on the ship, then known only as Hull Number 534, began in December of 1930 on the River Clyde by the John Brown and Company shipyard at Clydebank in Scotland. Work was halted in December 1931 due to the Great Depression, and Cunard applied to the British government for a loan to complete Hull Number 534. The loan was granted, but there was also a catch to this loan. The White Star Line had to merge with Cunard, and the Oceanic got put on hold and it was never actually built. However, the money from White Star and Cunard with the British loan together was what finished the Queen Mary. And also, this money also they had enough in the wallet, so to speak, to build a running mate, which would later be Queen Elizabeth. And the intention was Cunard's always intention to provide a two-ship weekly service to New York. Yes, okay, so I already talked about the condition. I skipped ahead a little bit. Both lines agreed on this, and the merger was completed on May 10th of 1934. That was the last year the White Star Line was ever actually listed as its own. It became Cunard White Star, and then White Star Line by itself was officially dissolved in 1950. The Queen Mary's work resumed immediately, and she was launched on September 26th of 1934. Completion ultimately took 3.5 years and cost £3.5 million sterling, which was then equal to $17.5 million, equivalent to $354,483,831 in the year 2021. Much of the ship's interior was designed and constructed by the Bromsgrove Guild, and prior to the ship's launch, the River Clyde had to be specifically designed to cope with her size, this being undertaken by the engineer D. Allen Stevenson. The ship was named after Mary of Teck, Queen Mary. If you ever watched The Crown, that's the older woman, the Queen Elizabeth's grandmother, who was the consort of King George V. Until her launch, the name was kept a closely guarded secret. Now, legend has it that Cunard intended to name the ship Victoria, in keeping with company tradition of giving its ship's names ending in IA, but when company representatives asked the king's permission to name the ocean liner after Britain's greatest queen, he said his wife, Mary of Teck, would be delighted, and so the legend goes. The delegation had, of course, no other choice but to report that number 5 through 4 would be called Queen Mary. The story was, and still is, denied by company officials, and traditionally the names of sovereigns have only been used for capital ships of the Royal Navy. This anecdote has been widely contested ever since Frank Brainard published it in his 1947 book, The Lives of the Liners. Some support for this story was provided by Washington Post editor Felix Morley, who sailed as a guest on the Cunard line on Queen Mary's 1936 maiden voyage, which, like I said, this is part of that book that was given out on that voyage. In his 1979 autobiography, For the Record, Morley wrote that he was placed at the table with Sir Percy Bates, the chairman of the Cunard line. Bates told him the story of the naming of the ship on condition you won't print it during my lifetime. The story was finally proven in 1988 when Brainard attended the same dinner party as Eleanor Sparks, daughter of Sir Ashley Sparks, who had been with Bates during the conversation with George V. She confirmed the favorite ship story to him, telling the exact anecdote that Brainard had published in his book. Despite this, Cunard as a company still denies the name change. It is also possible the name Queen Mary was decided upon as compromise between Cunard and the White Star Line, as both lines had traditions of using names either ending in IC with White Star and IA with Cunard. And the name had already been given to the Clyde turbine steamer T.S. Queen Mary, so Cunard made an arrangement of its owners, and this older ship was renamed Queen Mary II. Queen Mary was fitted with 24 Yarrow boilers and 4 boiler rooms and 4 Parsons turbines and 2 engine rooms. Titanic, if you remember from my Titanic video, I believe I mentioned this, had 1 Parsons turbine with a central propeller and then 2 steam reciprocating engines on either wing propeller. And the Queen Mary had 2 engine rooms. The boilers delivered 400 pounds per square inch or 28 bar steam at 700 degrees Fahrenheit, which provided a maximum of 212,000 shp or 158,000 kilowatts to 4 propellers, each turning at 200 RPMs. Also, well, I remember, I'm not entirely sure if I will be able to actually post this. Actually, I should be able to now with the community tab. I do have a Queen Mary model. I do want to support these guys, so I will post this on the community tab if I can. I have a, not on the community model, I have a community tab, which you guys have voted on already for that poll recently. And the Queen Mary model that I have here was built by the Roller 3D, which is a small business out of, Oklahoma. I forget exactly where, but please go support them. I was not sponsored by them, but I do want to give my support to them, so please go support them there. And the customer service is amazing. And I'll admit, my Titanic Honor and Glory models, they shatter very easily. This thing fell off the shelf the same day that those did. This barely had a scratch on it. So, it's pretty durable. It's not a bath toy though, you know what I mean. But, they're pretty durable, so please go support them. Anyway, on March 24th, 1936, she left Clydebank and ran aground on the River Clyde, but with the help of tugboats, she was refloated. So, let's move to the pre-war years. This is a pretty famous photograph of the Queen Mary. I don't know what year it was from. Also, you see that water there? That's where the sewage came out. For any ship enthusiasts out there. So in 1934, the new liner was launched by Her Majesty Queen Mary, same namesake, as RMS Queen Mary. On her way down the slipway, Queen Mary was slowed by 18 drag chains to check the liner's progress in the River Clyde, a portion of which had been widened to accommodate the launch. When she sailed on her maiden voyage from Southampton on May 27, 1936, she was commanded by Sir Edgar Britton, who had been the master designated for Queen Mary White Star, whilst the ship was under construction at the John Brown shipyard. Queen Mary measured 80,774 gross registered tons, and her rival Normandy, which originally measured 79,280 gross registered tons, had been modified the preceding winter to increase her size 83,243 gross registered tons. So the Queen Mary and Normandy started construction around the same time. I forget if I mentioned that earlier or not, but they did. However, the Queen Mary was halted, and the Normandy actually had much less time than the Queen Mary to sail, but still. And if you guys would like a video on the Normandy, please just let me know. Sad story. Queen Mary sailed at high speed for most of her maiden voyage to New York until heavy fog forced a reduction of speed on the final day of the crossing, arriving in New York Harbor on June 1, 1936. Queen Mary's design was criticized for being too traditional, especially when Normandy's new hull was revolutionary, with a clipper-shaped streamlined bow. Except for her cruiser's stern, she seemed to be an enlarged version of her Cunard predecessors from the pre-First World War era. Her interior design, while mostly Art Deco, seemed restrained and conservative when compared to the ultra-modern French liner. Queen Mary proved to be the more popular vessel than her rival in terms of passengers carried, though. In August of 1936, Queen Mary captured the Blue Riband, which is, if you guys would like a video on that as well, please let me know, which is a prestigious award that was given to ships who crossed the Atlantic in the fastest time. With average speeds of 30.14 knots, or 34.68 miles per hour, westbound, and then 30.63 knots, or 35.25 miles per hour eastbound. Normandy was refitted with a new set of propellers in 1937 to reclaim the honor, but in 1938, Queen Mary took back the Blue Riband in both directions of average speed of 30.99 knots westbound and 31.69 knots eastbound, record to stand until lost to the SS United States permanently in 1952. And I was wrong, not 1959, it would be I believe it was 49, the United States was launched. Don't quote me on that though, I don't know for sure. Among facilities available on board Queen Mary, the liner featured 2 indoor swimming pools, beauty salons, libraries, and children's nurseries for all 3 classes, a music studio and lecture hall, telephone connectivity to anywhere in the world, outdoor paddle tennis courts, and dog kennels. The largest room on board was the cabin class main dining room, spanning 3 stories in height and anchored by wide columns. The ship had many air-conditioned public rooms aboard. The cabin class swimming pool facility spanned over 2 decks in height. This was the first ocean liner to be equipped with her own Jewish prayer room, part of a policy to ensure that British shipping lines avoided the anti-Semitism evident in Nazi Germany at the time. The cabin class main dining room featured a large map of the transatlantic crossing with twin tracks symbolizing the winter and spring route further south to avoid icebergs, Titanic, and summer-autumn route. During each crossing, a motorized model of Queen Mary would indicate the vessel's progress en route. As an alternative to the main dining room, Queen Mary featured a separate cabin class veranda grill and a sun deck at the upper aft end of the ship, so that would be back here. The veranda grill was an exclusive a la carte restaurant with a capacity of approximately 80 passengers and was converted to be the Star Night Club at night. Also on board was the observation bar, which actually I don't remember exactly where it was, but I believe it was down in here. Could be wrong on that. An Art Deco-style lounge with wide ocean views. Woods from different regions of the British Empire were used in their public rooms and staterooms, because when the Queen Mary was built, there was a British Empire. Accommodation ranged from fully equipped, luxurious cabin, or first-class staterooms, to modest and cramped third-class cabins. Artists commissioned by Cunard in 1953 for works of art in the interior included Edward Wadsworth and A. Duncan Carse. I realize this footage is a little grainy, but I mean, this is Queen Mary just in her wartime gray. So, in late August 1939, Queen Mary was on a return run from New York to Southampton. The international situation led to her being escorted by the battlecruiser HMS Hood. Also, the Hood had a very bad ending. There's a reason the Bismarck was sunk. That's because the Hood was brought down by the Bismarck. Now, if you guys like a video on the Hood, like any other topics I've talked about in this video so far, just let me know in the comments. She arrived safely and set out again for New York City on September the 1st. By the time she arrived, war had been declared, and she was ordered to remain in port alongside Normandy until further notice. In March of 1940, Queen Mary and Normandy were joined in New York by Queen Mary's new running mate, Queen Elizabeth, fresh from her secret voyage from Clydebank. The three largest liners in the world sat idle for some time until the Allied commanders decided that all three ships could be used as troop ships. Normandy was destroyed by fire during her troop ship conversion. She was going to be the American troop ship USS Lafayette. Queen Mary left New York for Sydney, Australia, where she, along with several other liners, was converted into a troop ship to carry Australian and New Zealand soldiers in the United Kingdom. Now, most troop ships kept their name. The reason the Normandy did not was because France was being occupied by the Nazis at this point in time, so she was taken as a war prize, pretty much to, I forget the exact terminology, but I'm going to call it a war prize, by the United States, and was turned into Lafayette. However, she burned and rolled over in the harbor and sank. In the Second World War conversion, the ship's hull, superstructure, and funnels were painted navy gray. As a result of this new color and a combination for great speed, she became known as the Gray Ghost. To protect against magnetic mines, a degaussing coil was fitted around the outside of the hull, so that would be down here below the waterline. Inside, stateroom furniture and decoration were removed and replaced with triple-tiered fixed wooden bunks, which were later replaced by standee or fold-up bunks. A total of 6 miles of carpet, 220 cases of china, crystal, and silver services, tapestries and paintings were removed and stored in warehouses for the duration of the war. The woodwork in the staterooms, the cabin-class dining room, and other public areas were covered with leather. Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were the largest and fastest troop ships involved in the war, often carrying as many as 15,000 men on a single voyage, and often traveling out of convoy and without escort. Their high speed and zigzag courses made it virtually impossible for U-boats to even catch them. Queen Mary's tragic war career. On October the 2nd, 1942, Queen Mary accidentally sank one of her escort ships, if you did not know that, slicing through the light cruiser. Now, I pronounce this first Curaçao. Now, it's actually the HMS Curaçao. I guess they're right, Curaçao, yeah. Off the Irish coast with a loss of 239 lives. So, Queen Mary is going to make her next zigzag here. She's going back and forth. And Curaçao interprets just going a different direction. So it cuts, because it's supposed to be turning with her, it cuts across her bow, which is moving quite fast, and Queen Mary sliced right through her. Due to the risk of U-boat attacks, Queen Mary was under orders not to stop under any circumstances and steamed on for fractured stem. By that, it was bent in right up here. Some sources claim that hours later, the convoy's lead escort, consisting of Bramham and one other ship, returned to rescue 99 survivors of Curaçao's crew of 338, including her captain John W. Boutwood. The claim is contradicted by the liner's then staff captain and later Cunard Commodore, Harry Grattidge, who records that Queen Mary's captain, Gordon Illingsworth, immediately ordered the accompanying destroyers to look for survivors within moments of Curaçao's sinking. From December 8th through 14th, 1942, Queen Mary carried 10,389 soldiers and 950 crew. During this trip, while 700 miles from Scotland during a gale, she was suddenly hit broadside by a rogue wave that might have reached a height of 28 meters. An account of this crossing can be found in Carter's book. This inspired the movie The Poseidon Adventure, which actually was shot aboard the Queen Mary. As quoted in the book, Carter's father, Dr. Norval Carter, part of the 120th Station Hospital on board at the time, wrote in the letter that at one point Queen Mary almost capsized. One moment the top deck was at its usual height and then swoon, down, over, and forward she would pitch. And this is from his book. It was calculated later that the ship rolled 52 degrees and would have capsized had she rolled another 3 degrees over. From July 25th to 30th, 1943, Queen Mary carried 15,740 soldiers and 943 crew, which is the steady record for the most passengers ever transported on one vessel at one point in time. This is only possible in summer as passengers had to sleep on deck. During the war, Queen Mary carried British Prime Minister Winston Churchill across the Atlantic for meetings with fellow Allied forces officials on several occasions. He was listed on the passenger manifest as Colonel Ward. So, since we're almost to 20 minutes here, I figured I would stop the video here before we move on to post-war years, and then I will make a part 2. Okay guys, bye.